According to a study that replicated the environment on a young Mars, the red planet would have likely been habitable for methanogens, bacteria that live in severe conditions on Earth. According to a recent study done by researchers from the University of Arizona, the planet's early circumstances would have likely supported life if it had ever been on Mars, which is a big if. Mars is now dry, very cold, and has a weak atmosphere. Therefore, it is quite unlikely that anything living could exist on the surface. The research suggests that Earth's smaller red neighbor may have been more habitable 4 billion years ago. On October 10th, the work was published in the journal Nature Astronomy. The majority of specialists studying Mars agree that the atmosphere of the planet was once considerably denser than it is now. According to Regis Ferrière, a professor in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Arizona, it would have likely generated a moderate temperature that enabled water to flow and maybe microbial life to flourish if it had been rich in carbon dioxide and hydrogen. Ferrière said that while the authors do not claim that life existed on early Mars, their research shows that subsurface early Mars would have very likely been habitable to methanogenic microorganisms. There are known methanogens that live in harsh environments on Earth and transform chemical energy from their surroundings into methane as a waste product. They might be discovered, for instance, close to hydrothermal vents along ocean bottom cracks. They sustain vast ecosystems there that have evolved to withstand severe water pressures, complete darkness, and subfreezing temperatures. The study team explored a speculative scenario of a developing Martian ecosystem using cutting-edge simulations of Mars crust, atmosphere, and temperature together with an ecology model of a population of Earth-like bacteria metabolizing carbon dioxide and hydrogen. On Earth, hydrogen is mostly bound to water and is only seldom found on its own, often in remote areas like hydrothermal vents. However, the scientists speculate that its abundance in the Martian atmosphere might have offered a plentiful source of energy for methanogenic microorganisms roughly 4 billion years ago, when circumstances would have been more suitable for life. Due to high levels of hydrogen and carbon dioxide, two potent greenhouse gases that trap heat in the atmosphere, early Mars would have been significantly different from what it is now, moving toward warmth and moisture rather than aridity, according to Ferrière. He stated that although Mars may have been a bit colder than Earth at the time, it was not quite as frigid as it is today, with typical temperatures likely hanging over the freezing point of water. Early Mars is thought to have been a rocky planet with a porous crust, saturated in liquid water that likely created lakes and rivers, maybe even seas or oceans. Current Mars has been characterized as an ice cube coated in dust. He continued by stating that spectroscopic examinations of rocks exposed on the Martian surface indicated that the water would have been extremely salty. The scientists used models that forecast surface and crustal temperatures for a certain atmospheric composition to recreate the circumstances early life forms might have experienced on Mars, in order to determine whether biological species would have been able to thrive in their local environment and how they would have changed it through time. Scientists then merged those data with an ecosystem model they had constructed. After creating our model, we literally put it to work in the Martian crust, according to Boris Sautery, the paper's lead author. He was formerly a postdoctoral fellow at Ferrière's lab and is now a postdoctoral fellow at Paris's Sorbonne University. This enabled us to assess how likely it would be for a Martian subsurface ecosystem. What impact, if any, such a biosphere would have had on the Martian crust's chemistry, and how those changes would have influenced the atmosphere's chemical makeup. Our objective was to construct a replica of the Martian crust with its combination of rock and salty water, allow gases from the atmosphere permeate into the ground, and test if methanogens could survive with that. And the overall answer is yes. These bacteria may have survived in the planet's crust, he said. The team then set out to discover the fascinating topic of how deep one would have had to search for life if it existed underground. According to Sautery, The Martian atmosphere would have given the chemical energy, in this instance, hydrogen and carbon dioxide, that the creatures would have required to survive. He said that since it was so cold on the surface of early Mars, any potential life would have needed to go deeper into the crust to find a more hospitable environment. How far into life must it go to strike the ideal balance between temperature and the availability of the chemicals required for growth? We discovered that the top few hundreds of meters would have provided the best conditions for the microbial communities in our simulations. They were able to forecast the climatic feedback of the change in atmospheric composition brought on by the biological activity of these bacteria by adjusting their model to account for how activities operating above and below the ground impact one another. The research found that life on ancient Mars may have flourished at first, but that its chemical feedback to the atmosphere would have triggered a worldwide cooling of the planet, making the surface uninhabitable and forcing life further and deeper below, and perhaps to extinction. Our findings show that biological activity would have radically transformed Mars' atmosphere extremely quickly, within a few tens or hundreds of thousands of years. Microbes would have greatly chilled the planet's temperature by eliminating hydrogen from the atmosphere. As a result of the biological activity, the surface of early Mars would soon have gone into glaciation. In other words, the planet's surface may have been inhospitable very early on as a result of climatic change brought on by Martian life. Because Mars' atmosphere essentially evaporated and entirely thinned at that time, Sautrey said, these bacteria would have faced the challenge of finding another source of energy. On top of that, they would have had to go much further through the crust, and the temperature would have fallen considerably. It is now exceedingly difficult to estimate how long Mars might have stayed habitable. Future Mars exploration missions could provide solutions, but problems will still exist, according to the experts. For instance, while Hellas Planitia, a vast plain carved out by the impact of a sizable comet or asteroid very early in Mars history, was considered a particularly promising site to search for signs of past life, the area's topography causes some of Mars' most intense dust storms, making it potentially too dangerous to be explored by an autonomous rover. Such locations may return to the shortlist for next expeditions to the planet, Sautrey added, after humans start exploring Mars. The team's current study is focused on contemporary Mars. Methane levels in the atmosphere have been detected to be elevated by the NASA Curiosity rover and the European Space Agency's Mars Express satellite. While these spikes could be the result of processes other than microbial activity, they do open the intriguing possibility that life forms like methanogens may have survived in isolated pockets on Mars, deep underground, oasis of alien life in an otherwise hostile world. Thanks for watching. Take a look at some of our other videos. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.